Oh, well, hey, y'all, it's Thursday evening, and it's time for another porch devotional. I should have named this series A View from the Porch because I like that. There was an old radio talk show host that was a comedian, and he wrote one book, I believe, in his life. His name was Ludlow Porch, and that was his stage name, so to speak. But that book was entitled A View from the Porch, and I like that. You know, we live in some really strange times. I don't know about you, but it breaks my heart to see what's going on in our culture, but in our nation when it comes to people who have lost all sense of reality of authority. And see, that's the issue really when it comes down to it for people is, who is the authority over my life? When we watch people trying to protest the death of a man that never should have died. He was in police custody. I really can't get my mind around why that police officer continued to torture that man, but he did. Now, he's not every policeman, so the people who blame this on all the police officers who would burn down a police precinct, who would attack police, shoot police, if you're watching the news, then your heart is broken also, because there's some bad stuff going on. But you know, not all policemen are bad, not all factory workers are bad, not all Hollywood people are bad, not all preachers are bad, but people are bad. There's some bad stuff in folks. You need to understand sin is in the world, and the reason that we have riots and people who are out of control is that they don't recognize the authority of a God. I like what the scriptures say in one place where it says, don't fear men, fear God, because he can take you out, basically is what he's saying. And so why do we, in school and culture, everywhere, in the home, we've lost the ability to be real about authority. Where there's no authority, there's anarchy, and that's what we're looking at here. And then when the authorities' hands are tied by leaders who will not stop it, then, you know, I don't know about you. I don't know if I know the right answer to it. I do. The answer to it is a changed heart. The answer to it is Jesus. And it just goes to show us that the world is exactly like the Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy about. Now, you need to understand about this 2 Timothy I'm about to read to you. A lot of people have been putting it out there. I have a version of the Bible called the Tree of Life version, and it reads a little bit differently than the others, but Paul's writing to Timothy, this young preacher, and he says, but understand this, that in the last days, and by the way, this is 2 Timothy, 3rd chapter, 1st verse, but understand this, that in the last days, hard times will come. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, hard-hearted, unforgiving, backbiting, without self-control, brutal, hating what is good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of the pleasure rather than lovers of God. And he goes on, he says, holding to an outward form of godliness, but denying its power. And then Paul tells Timothy, avoid these people. Folks, what Paul's writing is about the church. He's preparing a young preacher to understand that in the church there will be people like this. In those last days, he's not writing about all the people who don't know Jesus. See, what we need to understand is the letters that Paul writes. He writes to Christians. He's writing to churches. And then he expresses this to a young preacher to say to Timothy, And there's an indication when you read Timothy that Paul was afraid that Timothy was going to walk away from the ministry. And so Paul is encouraging this young preacher to hang in there, that things are going to get bad at times. So we're living in these bad days, these hard times, like Paul puts it. And the question is, I guess the question is, what can we do about it? But the only answer to everything that we see going on is on an individual basis. I cannot control what somebody else does. And by the way, neither will God. God will not force his will on anybody. We can pray for God's will to be done. We can pray that these people who are out of control, burning things and destroying people's livelihoods, shooting police officers, throwing rocks and bottles and Molotov cocktails, we can actually, we have to be careful as Christians, because we could start to be angry and hate these folks. The Bible says we can't do that. Jesus encourages us to love our enemies, to love those who are out of control. See, God will not force his will on anybody. When sin came into the world, God had a plan. And the plan was that Jesus would come and die on the cross, and that through him we could honor God with our lives. But if you ever doubt that God is in control, or you don't think that he has the power to do whatever he seeks to do in his own plan, then you don't understand God. God is a God of love. He loves everybody. He loves all those people who are out of control. But listen, we have to take individual responsibility. Knowing Jesus is a personal relationship. And the way that we change things is one person at a time. We have to talk into and live into the lives of people who find themselves out of control because of sin or circumstances or whatever. So I would encourage you in this devotional to make sure, Paul says, now understand, in those last days, it's going to get hard. And it's been hard, guys. The last days started when Jesus left the earth. We've been in the last days. But Paul's being specific here, and if you will look at those things in 2 Timothy 3, 1 and following, you will see exactly what's happening, because Paul says, look, church, Timothy, teach the church to love Jesus and to love the authority of God, to understand God's position in the universe. He created it. It is all his. He owns it. He allows us to live in it. He created us for his purposes. When sin came into the world, his purposes get shoved back because sin takes over, and our physical human nature takes over. So I would encourage you tonight, this Thursday night, when you listen to this, that this back porch devotional today will bring some good thoughts to your mind. Guys, this too will pass. I believe that. It's going to take some time. I don't know what the end result will be. But we need to understand that God is still in control. He loves all of us, and it's his love that sent Jesus to the cross so that there would not be anarchy in the world, that there would be peace. And Jesus says this, remember, peace I leave you, my peace I leave to you. Not as the world gives peace, but my peace. And guys, that's contentment in my heart. It is a relationship with Jesus that makes me content, and then living the life that he gave me to live. I pray you have a good evening, that as we pray for our nation and our leaders, and pray for all those people who are out of control, that God will touch their hearts through someone or through his word. Well, you have a good evening. Love y'all, and hope to see you Sunday. By the way, I'll begin a new series of sermons this Sunday on the first Sunday in June, and I'll be preaching all 4 weeks, and looking forward to that. I hadn't done that in a long time, and so I'm looking forward to it. And it's entitled Vital Tweaks in just 4 weeks. We want to tweak our discipleship, and I hope you get something out of these sermons, okay? Great to be with you tonight, and you have a good evening. Love you. Bye-bye.